Welcome everybody to our 160th Reading Online Sports Economics Seminar, our first after Easter. And it's good to be back. It's good to have Galila, Nasser and Finn Simon, who are going to present for us today the effect of geographical proximity on youth talent development application on German football. Before I hand over to Galila and Finn, I just want to mention that the schedules for both the Reading Football Economics Conference and the Sports Economics Sports Management International Conference, which is May the 7th and 8th here in Reading, has been put online, and the schedule also for the 10th Football and Finance Conference at the University of Duisburg, Essen, sorry, on May the 13th and 14th. That's also online as well. I will put a link in the chat where you can find a website where the schedules for both conferences are. If you want to attend, registration is open for both, and you'd be more than welcome to attend. At the Reading Football Economics Conference, there will be the first awarding of an award that I've forgotten the name of. Alex Krumer hopefully can bail me out, but the Sports Economics Review, which sponsors these talks and is sponsoring that conference, is handing Colin Camera of Caltech a prestigious award in the field of sports economics. If you do want to attend, as I say, registration is open, and I will put links in the chat. If you can't see the chat, then send me an email and I'll happily share you details if you need them for these conferences. That's enough delaying. Galila, please do take away your talk.
Thank you. It's not working. Some permissions. Excuse me. Just
these things sometimes happen.
Yes. So, okay, can I ask you, Fen, maybe you share, but it looks like I need some security, or the IT guy have to do it, because it's not my work laptop, so excuse me, I fixed that on Zoom, but I didn't present on Microsoft before, so I will get in contact with him later. Thank you,
everyone
Fen.
should be able to see it now, right?
Yep.
Thank you. So hello, everyone. I am Galila Nasser, PhD student at University of Bielefeld, and today I'm presenting together with my co-author, Fen Simon. He's also a PhD student at University of Hamburg. We have been working on this large project on the youth talent development. So we are checking the effect of geographical proximity on youth talent development application on the German football. So when we first thing to start with that we have, as everyone here may know, millions of people play football. Millions of people play football regularly. However, only a very small amount, it's like 0.04% only, who are able to make it to the professional football league. And we have to know that the German Federation, or the German Football Association, is one of the biggest members, because they have above 7 million members are officially registered as a football players in Germany. I would say 1 million or more are women, but it's still a huge number when we put them all together. So this is very important, that, you know, it's not easy for anyone when we are talking about the youth talent, how many percentage can make it to the professional. From where I came and all people came, a lot of families have high hopes that kids in the young age would make it to the professional and be famous football player. And that's why we want to focus more about what's going on in the younger age football players, and when it comes in terms of that distance. When we have to start that the youth talent development started after 2000 European Championship disappointment, as may people remember, It was a huge surprise that Germany lost in the group stage, and this was even after the results of the World Cup before in 1988, where they couldn't make it to the loss in the quarterfinal. And after that, the DFB decided that they have to create these talent performance centers. And just to give a small hint about the investment in these centers, we have over 1 billion euros. We're just in a frame of 10 years approximately in these talent centers all over Germany. So it's a huge investment and foundation that they want to create young talents and discover more players. It's one of the important things that we want to study that's also coming from the next season. Germany is deciding to make a new reforms with a new system where they have high hopes that this will increase the travel distance for the players and for the clubs. And also they have high hopes that this will lead to more participations from even not only the professional clubs, but also the amateur teams. So this may lead to discovering new talents. We believe this will be an important topic in the future to discover if this really will have a positive or negative impact. And that's why the study of the distance is very important to check how it's before the new reforms, and maybe in the future we will see how it will be. Is it better or not? And that's why we focus here on in this paper on the under-19 players since 2002, since the creation of the youth talent development. And of course, we will stop in 2019 before Corona, not to new variables are included in the equation. So I will start first by giving small hint about the NLZ. So the NLZ, when they started, they said it would be obligatory for the first Bundesliga. 1 year later, they even decided that the second Bundesliga, so if any team is participating in the first or second Bundesliga, they have to create a development center. And this center have a lot of strict rules, including a lot of aspects of the player's life, of the training, education, and finance. There is a lot of clubs that share that they sometimes invest above $500,000 euros per year on these youth development centers. So it's a huge and large investments in terms of the money and it covers all aspects of the player's life from a young age. In 2003 and 4, when it started with only 36 teams that joined. And then through over the years, the number of teams have increased. So when we were talking about 23, 24, we currently have 58 teams. Not all the 58 teams, of course, are teams that are playing in the first or second Bundesliga. So there are a lot of lower teams in small cities who decide to create the youth talent development. Why we are covering this? Because in our data and in our analysis, we will differentiate between different subsets. So we will look about if the geographical proximity have an impact on all the under-19 players overall. And then we will focus about the NLZ teams, since it's a huge investment. And then we will even have a smaller subset. We will only see the NLZ teams that have professional seniors playing in the first and second. So we differentiate between all of them we start with a larger subset and we go for smaller subsets to make sure that the results are consistent in all of them. When we talk about geographical proximity, if you want to look in the literature, we will find literature covers it in a lot of different aspects. So we have a lot of publishment and studies that cover how people living in an area close to sports facilities, it increases their sports activities, it increases their physical health. And then further research covered also when you are living proximity to sport facilities, there is a huge correlation and impact on the athlete future success in the sports. So if as a kid I'm living in a neighborhood where I have access to a lot of sports facilities, this may increase my chance to make it in a professional league in the future. There is also a way different aspects when they try to check how when clubs travel more, this affects their outcome. They score less goals or more goals, they have better. So we may find some research that that find the negative impact that when they travel for a very long distance, it's accompanied with lower outcome. So they score less goals, or they may have lose more games as away than home teams. But also there is different papers and evidence when they check within a season, the club's performance are positively affected by other clubs located to them. In a different way to say that if I'm living in a city or a state where I have a lot of good clubs closer to me, this may makes me have a better performance. So overall, when we look to geographical proximity, we can have it from a lot of variants on different aspects. Today in our presentation, our research question is focused mainly to see if geographical proximity has an impact on the future career of youth players in Germany, and if it's a positive or a negative impact. And as I have explained, we divide our data set and our analysis into 3 subsets. And to make sure that we are talking about not just all players, we have at least 25% of playing time. So we study the players who play a minimum number of minutes during the use, because if they were not so good, so we drop higher. So we will have the under 19 youth player, and then the NLZ, and then the NLZ senior teams who are playing in the league. The third subset, we want to say that it's the teams that are obliged to create. So they don't create it voluntary. They have to create youth talent centers. And after that, Fen will continue with starting with the descriptive statistics section.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Galila. This distinction is very important, that we focus on the players who played at least 25% of the playing time. Of course, we're going to lose out on exceptional talents who are not going to participate in the under-19 league because they are that exceptional that they skip these specific age group. They directly go to the adult team. Nevertheless, like Galila already mentioned, we are focusing only on players who at least seem capable of playing at the highest under-19 level by the coaches. And therefore, we're going to limit our observational data set. But just some general information about our data set, we created via web crawling from transfermarket.de, a German company where we can get information on all youth games in Germany for the under 17, under 19 leagues. Our extraction period is some time ago. Like Galila already mentioned, we are working for some longer time on this project. So we extracted the data for the under 19 youth leagues in October 2022. And we did an update in this year regarding our dependent variable, making it to the professional level, either the first Bundesliga, second Bundesliga, or third league this January, because of course, in the meantime, players could have gotten the chance to maybe switch clubs, they get promoted with their clubs, so they are able to play on a professional level. Our period of investigation, Galila already mentioned, we are looking at the seasons from 2003-04, so the first official season of the under-19 Bundesliga, the introduction season, until the season 18-19. Due to the COVID pandemic, there were some changes in the number of teams that were able to participate in the league. Therefore, some of our covariates are based on team points per game, goals scored, and so on. And they would have been a bit biased if we take into consideration these newer years, so to say, or the more recent years. Another problem would be, of course, it might take some time if I'm not already playing at an NLZ, which has a senior team, which is competing in the first Bundesliga, for example. I might have to switch 1 or 2 clubs until I'm finally at the stage of making it a professional. Therefore, it's quite good to have some time in between in order to give people time to catch up, maybe if they are late bloomers in their career. We have 3 leagues in Germany at the under-19 level, at the highest Bundesliga level: under-19 Bundesliga North, Northeast, under-19 Bundesliga South, Southwest, and the under-19 Bundesliga West. So in total, we have 14 teams per league. So altogether, within one season, we have 42 clubs, which are competing at the highest level. For our data set, for all of the 16 years, we have the age groups 1985 till 2002. So the youngest players in our data set are now 21 or 22. And we have a total number of observations of 18,815. Those 18,815 observations are players who at least made one appearance in the under-19 Bundesliga. So this is not our final subset, which we are analyzing. This is the data from all of the players who participated at least once in their career in the under-19 Bundesliga. So more general information, we have observational data for every player for every season, but of course, one player can participate in more than one season at the under-19 level. And therefore, in total, we have 11,280 individual players and 95 clubs throughout the years. Due to promotions or relegations, these clubs in the leagues change over the course of time. So when the league was introduced in 2003, some of these clubs who participated at the highest level might not have the best youth system, the best youth teams, and they quickly got relegated and never showed up in our database once again. Therefore, we have this very high number of different clubs in our observation. Here's some general information about first our dependent variable. Our dependent variable, making it professional, according to our definition, is making at least one appearance in a professional league. So either one appearance in the German Bundesliga for adults, one appearance in the German second Bundesliga for adults, or one appearance in the German third league for adults as well. And we focused here on some, you can see I showed the observations. So for the players who make at least one first Bundesliga appearance, we have 1,730 observations from 868 individual players. So a bit different from the introductory text where we said, okay, less than 1% make it to the professional level. Of course, this less than 1% are all players in Germany or worldwide who play football in a club. We are now focusing on a very elite talent league. Therefore, we can say that, of course, the general level is quite high. Nevertheless, only 7.7% of all players make, in the end, one first Bundesliga appearance. So not that many, to be honest, but not surprisingly. On the other hand, for the third league, which is also a professional football league in Germany, we have 17.34% of all players. So less than one fifth of all players finally are able to make at least one professional appearance. And the question that we were asking ourselves is, are there differences in the geographical proximity? And since Germany is such a, in Europe at least, a bigger country, distance-wise, they separated the leagues into 3 different leagues. And you can see here the differences between the leagues in talent identification or talent development. And very interesting for me was that the under-19 Bundesliga South is actually the league with the highest development of professional players. So even though each and every season only 14 clubs can compete in the specific leagues at the highest under-19 level, those players who participate there seem to have a higher likelihood of making it pro later on. We have some general facts at the beginning. I don't want to go too much into detail because we have some limited time frame, but here you can see the development over the years for the different leagues of Bundesliga players. Again, we're talking about observations here. A potential explanation for these differences is that there are a different number of professional clubs coming from those leagues. So the table at the bottom, you can see the Bundesliga clubs at adult level from the different leagues. And at the beginning of our observation, we had 6 clubs from each league. And during this time, especially clubs from the south, they got promoted to the first Bundesliga at adult level, and therefore they have a higher percentage of all clubs, and therefore the likelihood increases that a player from this youth league might get a first Bundesliga appearance. One thing that Galila also mentioned, we are focusing on NLZs. Main reason is that in the next season, the NLZs, they cannot get relegated anymore in the new under-19 Bundesliga, meaning there's a rule change for NLZs because they are perceived as the talent development centers of Germany. And according, at least to our data, this is somehow true. So as you can see, we have a percentage of 81 or more than 81% of all observations are players from NLZs in our data set. And when we look at the observations who make it to the first Bundesliga, only very few observations from non-NLZ teams finally make at least one first Bundesliga appearance. So non-NLZ teams really play a minor role in developing elite athletes. So for our methodology, this was a bit much descriptive data. Like our methodology is a mixed effects logistic regression because we are looking at binary outcome variables, either making it pro in the first Bundesliga, second or third Liga or not. So we have a 1-0 binary variable. And we have some fixed effects because we have repeated observations of players. So we are not looking at the individual level, we are looking at observational level. Therefore, we have, or we could have several observations for the same person. So we have some fixed effects and we have random effects since we are looking at several seasons and different leagues. So we have the random effects seasons and leagues, and you can see here the general term, the logic term with the fixed effects estimators and the random effects. I will go into more detail of our different equations and variables, and then I will present the final equation because we are looking at 2 different equations, or we have to look at 2 different equations because we don't have enough data for all of our variables or covariates of interest. Therefore, we have a simple equation where we have variables where we have information for all of our 18,815 observations, but we also have covariates, specifically the footedness and the birth date, and there we only have information available for 10,643 observations. Of course, it's a bit a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I'm becoming a professional football player, I have more information on transfermarket.de. If I don't make it to the highest level and I quit at the under-19 stage after 1 season, I might not have that much information on this specific website. So it's a shortcoming of our source. Nevertheless, for the 16 years of our observation, we have more than 10,000 observations available for all of the covariates and variables of interest. So our main focus, as Galila already said, is on geographical proximity, and there are several different statistical measures how to measure geographical proximity. We use one from a paper from Chiao, where we first calculate the Haversine distance metric, so as the crow flies, between the different stadiums of the under-19 teams. So for every season, we calculate every distance between every club, sum this up, create a mean distance for every club and every season. And then we use this formula here from Xiao, the geoprox, we call the geoprox Germany variable. So we have the maximum distance and subtract the mean distance for a specific club in a specific season and divide this by the maximum distance minus the minimum mean distance. So in the end, we get a binary variable between 0 and 1. No, sorry, not a binary variable, a variable between 0 and 1. And yeah, a value closer to 1 denotes a higher geographical proximity between the under-19 clubs. And to make this a bit more clearer, we've created this map just to make sure everyone's on the same page. Here, the example for the FC Bayern Munich club. So in the first season, 2003, 2004, the furthest distance between the clubs, or for all the clubs in the under-19 Bundesliga, was Hansa Rostock. So they were quite far away, and the shortest distance, of course, from the same city, TSV 1860 Munich. And we did this for all of the clubs and calculate the mean distance, and then use the formula to create a geoprox Germany for Bayern Munich in this specific season. So you can see the development over the years that we, for the same club, can have different geoprox values, meaning all of the players who played for Bayern Munich in this specific season, they get the same geoprox Germany value. So for our simple equation, we have only 4 additional variables. First, team points per game, because this is something where we said, okay, playing at a better team means either the team is very good coaches, or the player is very good and he is participating heavily to the team's success. Goals is a player level variable. Of course, we are looking at individual goals scored during the under-19 years. We look at the position. Of course, if I'm playing as an attacker or a striker, I might have a higher likelihood of scoring goals. Therefore, we use this as well. And an interaction term, just to see if there's a connection between goals and offensive players, and if this might raise the likelihood of making it to the first, second, or third Bundesliga. In addition, the complex equation, not surprising, I already talked about it. We include 2 binary variables regarding is the player left-footed or not, and is the player born in the first quarter, because in the German youth development system, the relative age effect still is present. Therefore, it was quite interesting to see if being born in the first quarter of the year has a significant impact on making it to the professional level. So our equation terms with the variables added, we basically have some fixed effects for every season and individual, and these 2 random effects, season and league, included in our equation. Before we start, I first start with the mixed effects logistic regressions. We had some assumptions to prove. Linearity was proved with the help of a very, very big graph. Outliers was proved by the Cook's distance plot. We can see that there are some outliers, definitely. And this is something that we still need to work on, to identify single outliers and see if they have such a big impact on our analysis. Nevertheless, since the Cook's distance is not that far away from the average, therefore we still left them in our analysis. We tested for multicollinearity via the variance inflation factors, and we found, at least without the interaction term, of course, no multicollinearity. Nevertheless, it's not one of the assumptions for the mixed effects logistic regression, but we still tested it because, of course, we have autocorrelation, and Durbin-Watson test is significant, meaning we have autocorrelation in our data set. So now what we did, we created the subsets for the different, for our 3 different groups. First group is all of the observations who had more than 25% playing time in one season. You can see that the number of observations is getting down in this tables. I hope everyone can see this correctly. So instead of 18,815 observations, we only have 11,008 observations left. For the first Bundesliga, we don't have a significant effect of our geographical proximity variable, but we have a significant effect of our covariates, team points per game, and goals scored. Moreover, goals and offensive player is significant, but offensive player has nothing to do which position I'm in. It's not going to increase my likelihood of making at least one first Bundesliga appearance. This is the table on the left. The table in the middle is about making at least one second Bundesliga appearance. And here we have a significant effect of our GeoProx Germany variable, meaning the higher the GeoProx Germany is, the lower my likelihood is to make it to the first, to make at least one second Bundesliga appearance. So higher geographical proximity, at least for those observations, have a negative effect on my chances to make at least one second Bundesliga appearance. For the covariates, the same is true as before. Team points per game have a significant positive effect. Goals have a significant positive effect. And the interaction term is significant, but not the offensive, or the offensive player variable is marginally significant. And for the third Bundesliga, same is true as for the second Bundesliga. Only difference is that the category of the binary variable for offensive player is significant too, meaning there seems to be an effect for defensive players, because here again we have an odds ratio of lower than 1, meaning my likelihood decreases if I am an offensive player. We did this now several times. First, all observations. Now we focus on NLZs because, again, we have a lot of observations now in our first subset from clubs which are not known for producing first Bundesliga players, at least. Therefore, it might be that we just keep looking at players who don't really have a realistic chance of ever making it. Therefore, we focus on NLZs. Now, NLZ players with at least 25% playing time, but again, we have the same direction of the significance and also of the odds ratio. Again, for the first Bundesliga, no significant effects. For the second Bundesliga, our distance variable is significant. Again, a negative effect of a higher geographical proximity. And for the third Bundesliga, the same is true as well. Third subset, because I know it's a bit repetitive, but nevertheless, as you can see, we're getting fewer and fewer observations. In the last subset, we focus on the NLZs, where the adult team is in the first or second Bundesliga, meaning, of course, it's easier for those clubs to use to find a player from their own team and just give him one appearance in the specific league. Again, we don't have a significant effect for first Bundesliga appearances, but a significant effect for second and Bundesliga appearances, and also again in the same direction, meaning higher geographical proximity, a lower likelihood of making at least one professional appearance in this league. This was now for the more simple equation. We call it like this. For the more complex equation, we have similar effects. Again, first Bundesliga variables. For all of our 3 subsets, I can already say this because otherwise it's getting too repetitive. They are not significant, but we have significant effects for second and third Bundesliga appearances. Moreover, for all observations with more than 25% playing time, we can see that being born in the first quarter has apparently a negative effect on making it to the first Bundesliga, and not a positive effect, since we have a significant coefficient, but odds ratio lower than 1. This is only true for the second Bundesliga. For the NLZs, we have the same picture again. First Bundesliga not, but for second and third. And for the last subset, the NLZ with an adult team in the first or second Bundesliga, again, Geoprox Germany, significant and lower than 1, odds ratio lower than 1. So just as an overview, I just focused on the geographical proximity variable, and yeah, as I summed it up before, for the first Bundesliga, we don't have significant effects of our variable, but for second and third Bundesliga variable, for third and second Bundesliga appearances, we have a significant effect, and in the same direction. So always a significant negative effect of geographical proximity. We then continued with another analysis. Therefore, I skipped back to the methodology part, social network analysis, because, okay, I think a hand was raised.
You're on mute, Steve.
Sorry. This is a major problem for those of you who follow American college football, because our conferences or leagues are completely changing, requiring significant travel time. And I wonder if the difference could be explained by the money that the Bundesliga 1 clubs spend on making travel easier compared to Bundesliga 2 or lower, so that the problem isn't really traveling a distance on a nice airplane, wearing nice comfortable clothes, where a staff picks you up. It's traveling by bus or some other means that is very expensive. And so it's really that part of travel that is explaining your results. Would that be consistent with your observations?
It could be. It's a very nice explanation for it, that of course, when we are looking at players who compete at very good and well-situated NLZs, they have a more comfortable way of traveling, definitely, of course. We had a different perspective on it, to be honest, because in Germany, everything is still reachable via train and via bus, of course. Germany's big for Europe, but of course, in relation to the United States, not comparable at all. Our explanation is rather that the scouting for talent in the German Bundesliga, in the first German Bundesliga, it's different for these clubs. And for the second and third clubs, they are, again, financially not at the highest level. So they don't have this wide knowledge of the market. So they focus more on regional talent. That's our explanation. Again, we only have a descriptive data set, of course. We can only see, we don't know exactly why. We can only see there's a difference between first Bundesliga and second and third Bundesliga. And our main theory, again, we can't prove it with our data set, is, of course, that this identification of talent is different. So if I'm a scout at the first Bundesliga, I have a whole market view because I have more money. I can go to more matches. I have more scouts. Second and third Bundesliga, they have less money for scouting. So they don't have this market-wide knowledge. And if I'm at the outskirts of Germany and further away from the other competition, these clubs, they are giving their youth players a chance to play, because they're not going to get an under-19 player from the other part of Germany. So this is our main interpretation of this. Again, needs to be tested. We can only see on a descriptive level that there are differences in the likelihood of making a first league appearance. Okay, I would continue with another method that we use, because our original idea for the study was that, yeah, a complete different direction. Regional competition should normally improve the level of the players. So if I have a strong regional competition, the likelihood should increase that more players can play at the highest level, and not the other way around, like we already showed you in this mixed effects logistic regression. One of the problems, of course, we are only looking at the under-19 youth stage, meaning it's a very, very small time of the talent development phase of a player. Most of the talents, they join a football club at the under-8 level, in northern Germany at the under-11, under-12 level. So being at the, or only looking at the under-19 level, we only have a very small window of development, of this developmental time. And therefore we did another analysis looking at the social network of those players. And we used some principles from graph theory in order to analyze the different graphs. We created a different metric here. We used again the Haber-Seen distance metric between every player. So we're not going to sum up the whole travel distance, but rather the direct distance between players. And we inversed it in order to give players who are close by a higher value and players who are further away a lower value. And every player from the same season, they get a connection. They have a value greater than 0. Every player not from the same season, they get a value of 0. So how did we do this? We created huge Excel files, and we had to put in some measures regarding the different seasons, meaning if we look at this file from Excel, the player Florian Fromlowitz, the second from the top, he played in 2 seasons. In the first season, 2003, 2004, and 2004 and 2005. So this player has connections to all of the players from the season 2003, 2004, and 2004, 2005. The more seasons are playing, some players played 4 years at the under-19 stage because they got promoted to the under-19 teams at a very early age, the more connections these players have. Here again, very important, we have a change of perspective from the observational level to the from the observation level to the individual player level. So in total, we had 11,280 individual players, but we did not look for our social network analysis at players who switched clubs. Meaning there's one limitation of our analysis. We are not able to investigate the players with social network measures who change clubs during their under-19 spell. Of course, they could have changed clubs before, and some did, definitely. But during the under-19 spell, it's very difficult to allocate certain distance metrics to players who switch the club or maybe go to a completely different region within Germany and have a reasonable measure. So we focused only on players who did not switch clubs during the under-19 spell, which is still 10,414 players in total. And here we created 6 different networks. I'm not going to annoy you with all of the 6 because I think if we looked at one, it gets a bit repetitive. For our presentation today, we are focusing on the network for players from the south, so from the under-19 Bundesliga, south, southwest. So there we have 3,662 individual players, and we look at the 3 different graphs where we focused on players who made a professional appearance. Again, you can see here some different numbers. I'm going to shortly explain them because again, we focus on players who did not switch clubs. Here we can see we focus on 92% in our analysis. So 92% of all our individual players did not switch clubs. For players who make a professional level, In the first Bundesliga, this percentage is even higher, meaning it's less players change the clubs. In the under 19 level, they have somehow a higher likelihood than players who are not switching clubs. It's different for the third Liga. Here are the network measures which we are applying for our social network. So we look at degree centrality, which is nothing else than just a sum of all of the ties, a node, an individual player. A tie is the distance in this context. Has in a network, so degree centrality, if this is a significant predictor, players who spend more time in the under 19 league because they have more connections might have a higher likelihood of making it to a professional level. Between the centrality, it's about being an intermediary between otherwise unconnected dots. For example, players who connect some teams from different seasons. Again, a measure of a player who is longer in the under 19 league. Constraint is a reverse coded measure where we can identify structural holes in our research network. Again, if I'm further away from the distance, there might be some structural holes, which is going into the direction of our mixed effects logistic regression. And in the end, the closeness measure here indicates how close a node, so a player, is to all other nodes in the network. And just as a first test, excuse me, to see if our inverse metric is giving us some reliable results, we created a network which we did not analyze because we can't analyze in any way, but we created a network between all of the 95 clubs of our data set. In blue, you can see the clubs from the under 19 Bundesliga. In red, the clubs from the under 19 Bundesliga in the south, and in green, the under 19 Bundesliga from the west. And the node size here reflects where the professional players are developed at which club. Meaning, if you put the German map in behind it, it's clearly to see at the bottom Hamburg and Bremen, and at the bottom, at the top of the graph, sorry, and at the bottom of the network, you can clearly see Munich at the bottom right, and to the very left, you can see Freiburg and Stuttgart area, and you can see this green area, which is the Bundesliga West, which is more condensed, more clubs and more centers for talent development. But again, regarding the analysis, a bit more interesting, or it got very, very, very small. We created several networks based on all individual players. Here, for example, how the network looks like for the under 19 Bundesliga South-Southwest, and the node size here for in the first table or in the first graph at the top reflects the number of first Bundesliga appearances. Here, we are not focusing on a binary variable, making it or making it not. Here we look at the number of matches in the first Bundesliga. The second graph with the number 2 is the number of second Bundesliga matches, and the third graph is about the number of third Liga appearances. And what you can see here is like 3 different regions. The regions at the top is more or less Bavaria. You can see a lot of clubs from the Munich area. The region in the middle, this long condensed stripe, is the regions Stuttgart and surrounding. And at the bottom, this is solely Freiburg. So Freiburg somehow for this under 19 Bundesliga Southwest is like a sole region of talent development on its own. Another interesting point is you have to read this graph from the left to the right. So since we only give players from the same season connections, and you can see it via the node size. So the players who are located to the left, they have higher node sizes because they are coming from the beginning of our observation period, while on the right side of our graph, we have fewer bigger nodes because those are the players age 24, 25, because they were in the under 19 league in the last 5 to 6 years. And we created now this network. Again, here we have this distinction: blue for Bundesliga North, green for Bundesliga West, and red for Bundesliga South. And here we also analyzed our network. So these are only the individual players who make at least one first Bundesliga appearance. Not size, again, is the number of matches someone made in the first Bundesliga. And we analyzed if there's a correlation between our social network measures and how many matches someone makes. To be honest, we originally thought there cannot be an explanation between it, because these are completely different things. The distance and, of course, having more matches, being a full professional player for many years should not have any significant effect on each other. And of course, most of our social network measures are insignificant. The only measure that is for all of the 3 leagues significant, and I will show you this in a second, is the closeness centrality. Meaning, if I'm closer to other nodes in my network, this has a significant negative correlation with the number of matches. Interesting here, this is the first Bundesliga. Of course, I did not include the name of the players, but I don't know if you can see my mouse cursor. You can see those many red dots on the left side in this green area. This is Munich. So basically, Munich is at the outskirts of Germany, far away. If we go back to the overview, Munich is somewhere at the bottom right, if we look at whole of Germany and all of the clubs. But when it came to talent development at the early stages of the under-19 Bundesliga, Munich was in the center of the social network, because the distances were closer for players from Munich, because they had some more clubs at the highest level. FC Bayern Munich, TSV 1860 Munich, and Unterhaching as well. Of course, Unterhaching is a different city, but still very close by to Munich. They produced a lot of talent. Over the years, with the more different clubs coming to the under-19 Bundesliga, this whole network spread out. And this is that's the reason why Munich is no longer in the center of the network. This, and of course, that the 1860 club got relegated from the under-19 Bundesliga as well, and from the second Bundesliga as well. So they did not compete at the highest level anymore. Therefore, they became less relevant for talent development, and some other clubs joined as well. For the second Bundesliga, we have a very fuzzy graph. Again, closeness centrality has a significant negative effect on the number of matches. Here we have some differences between the Bundesliga North and South. So again, I can be at the outskirts of the network here, even though I'm from the same league. So both of them can either be at the top or at the bottom of our network, and not that much in the center of the network. Final social network analysis, because we are running a bit out of time. For the third Bundesliga, again, closeness centrality has a very weak, significant correlation with number of matches. Again, not as expected. Normally, we would have expected that none of these measures are significant, because making it in these leagues might have some other explanations. Nevertheless, we can see some connections between the position in the graph and the closeness to other nodes and the continuous career of those players. So again, for the conclusion in the end, just summing up what we've presented here, geographical proximity has no significant impact on the likelihood to play at least one professional match in the German Bundesliga, but has a significant impact on the likelihood to play at least one professional match in the second and third Bundesliga. Social network analysis revealed a significant impact of the closeness centrality in the network and the number of professional matches. Again, something that we did not expect. On the other hand, it can a potential explanation could be that players from the same club, so they are quite close to each other. Some are getting chances in the first Bundesliga, even though they might not have the ability to finally make some more matches than some others. So it's just like one good age group where everyone gets promoted to the first team. Some make some appearances. This one great talent has some more appearances, and therefore this closeness centrality might be significant because of this. Next steps would be that we analyze the networks for the under 19 leagues in total. I already presented this under 19 overview for first, second, and third league. Now it's our turn to analyze it with some different social network metrics, as well maybe with lagged models, because there can be an effect on talent development in previous seasons on making it to the professional level or not. And this is the next steps of our analysis. So it's nearly at the end. So thank you very much for your attention.
Great. Thank you very much, Galila and Finn. A really interesting talk on youth development in Germany. I'm going to also follow someone else and give you a Teams round of applause there. We've now got time for Q&A, so if anyone has any questions or comments for the authors, please do raise your hand and ask away. Stefan. Stefan, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, good. Yeah, very. It's really interesting, and it's a really nice idea to do this. I wonder if you're using the transfer data. I wonder if nationality is not something that you could feed into this. Presumably, these are mostly German nationals at the under 19 level, but there must be a lot of foreign players as well, right? And is that something you can look at?
Yeah, definitely. It's a very, very good point. Of course, from other countries, surrounding countries from Germany, there are a lot of different nationalities in the under 19 Bundesliga as well. Transfer market displays nationalities in a way that, for example, German citizens can have more than one citizenship. So sometimes it can be difficult to distinguish between the different nationalities, but definitely a very, very good point that we can also include in our analysis. If those players who are coming from, for example, the Netherlands or Belgium or Denmark or Poland, and they play at the under 19 league in Germany, might have a higher likelihood of making it because they are probably more professional if they get transferred to a German club.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was also thinking, every country has its issues around this, right? And so, and we know, I mean, in Germany, this is manifested in issues related to the Turkish population traditionally, but also now the large migration following the disasters in Syria and so on. And so, can your analysis shed any light on that? Is there any way to try and see whether there are consequences based on your background for your likelihood of progressing to the higher level?
In theory, it is possible, but I would not recommend doing it because again, a self-fulfilling prophecy, so to say, because for players who are making it, the likelihood is higher that this information is on transfer market. And for players who are not making it, we don't have enough data on these players.
So, I mean, I'm doing some work with Thomas Peters and Sam Hoey on race in England, and we have the issue of how do we classify players since we can't get a self-report. So we're using pictures, which is an imperfect classifier, but it is still it will tell you something. I'm wondering if a similar thing in the German case might not be pictures wouldn't work very well, but some algorithm based on name might work pretty good. So Turkish names are quite distinct from German style names, and although obviously you can't generalize about every individual, you can generalize about a population, and it's likely that you could assign some characteristics based on that. And I think, I mean, I wonder what you think. I mean, the issue in, for example, the issue in England in soccer, in football there was clearly obstacles to black players getting into professional teams, and I wonder if the same obstacles might exist for people of Turkish origin, people of Middle Eastern origin in Germany.
It's very, if I may shortly comment, it's a very interesting. I just would like to highlight is that there would be, there is, like when it comes to the Turkish, it's easier to get from the last names, but they will show as a German. Sometimes people have their second nationality, it shows them, sometimes not. I think I have one problem when it comes to German immigrants, because when we talk about Turkish, they are second or third generation. However, when we are talking about Syrian and new immigrants, even Ukrainian and other, they are really recent, and they all, after a short time, if they got the language, they got also German nationality. So they still appear as a first nationality German, and maybe they have extra nationalities. I think it's interesting if we can get more info about it, but it will be a bit problematic to differentiate between second and third generation who have been living here since before they are born, their families are here, and between people who are just moved in 2014 or shortly before. But majority of the immigrants, they either show only with Germans or with first nationality German, and transfer markets show other additional nationalities. We have to try to get some analysis. I think it's very interesting. Thank you.
Very interesting. Very interesting talk. Thank you.
Steve is next. And Steve, you might be on mute again because I muted you.
Thanks, and I apologize to everybody here for being the non-economist. My understanding of your conclusion of your findings, if I can summarize it in non-economics English, is that it is not so much the fact of travel during the season that makes the players less likely. It is that it is expensive to search for talent, and that the top teams in Bundesliga are able to do that, so they're going to find talent from all over. That suggests to me that the relevant measure, though, shouldn't be the mean of all the teams that you happen to be playing with in Bundesliga East or West, but how closely you are located to the centers of population where you can find people. And that might be a higher, if your hypothesis is right, that suggests to me that geographic proximity to some population centers where there's more people would be a better predictor than otherwise. I apologize for not being familiar with German geography, but to use English geography, which we both might be familiar with, it sounds to me that if you had a club that is an hour's drive from Manchester, which is a huge city, they might be able to scout players in Manchester, even though they're far away. Or if you had a team in the south of England, they're only an hour away from London, they could easily scout them, even though the team in somewhere in the south might be playing teams all around England with a very high disparity. So I wonder if you could comment on how that might be tested, and how this is really a story about scouting rather than travel.
Yeah, it's a very good point, because maybe I go back a bit. When we look at this graph, or this network of the places where first, second, and third Bundesliga players are like developed or identified, let's say, identified because they can transfer clubs at the youth stage. We're getting very, very close to the biggest agglomerations in Germany. So it's you're completely right. It's basically what we are mirroring here is the agglomeration of Germany. So in the middle of Germany, there's not that many people live right in the middle of Germany, but rather at the outskirts. And this is what we are basically detecting in a way in our analysis. But again, for first Bundesliga, this is not true. So there seems to be some difference between first Bundesliga and for all of the other leagues. So you're completely right. If we include this, and we've included it, an agglomeration variable, which is non-significant, so we don't get any real predictor variables with the agglomeration. But if we look at it from this network perspective and the distances, you're completely right. We're basically looking at the different places where people live, basically. Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. Clay.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I've got a question, and this may end up having to be an entirely different paper, but how do managers fit into this equation? Because I know it's not necessarily rare for U19 coaches to become top-level coaches elsewhere, but an argument for some of this could be that, you know, coaches are only hired from a regional network. They're only hired locally. They're only bringing their local talent with them. So that could be because if coaches are not geographically motivated, that could be a cool extension of this treatment, I think, of this idea at least.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. This is it's a very, very good perspective, especially a main explanation why we have this difference. Another potential explanation why we have the difference between first, second, and third, because maybe for first Bundesliga clubs, they don't scout regionally in youth clubs for their coaches. They either have some different talent pool for their managers, but of course, second and third, there might be a difference, and they promote their own under 19 coaches, and they are relying on their own talent that they have some contact with for the several years. So yeah, thank you. Very, very good perspective on this. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Clay. Any more questions and comments? A little bit related to Steve's final comment about where people live. I guess you don't have this, but presumably information on where the players themselves were born would be interesting. I mean, obviously you've got that kind of month of birth effect, but also I guess, you know, the fact that you're fortunate enough to be born close to Bayern Munich rather than, you know, in the center of Germany would probably make a difference in terms of your likelihood of doing well and playing at the top level.
Well, if I could just see if I understand the question, because when an economist asks a question that is not my understanding, I want to make sure this is right.
I'm not sure I asked the question, to be honest, Steve, but go on.
I would think it's the opposite, because Bayern Munich has such a good scouting system that your chances of being able to be identified by Bayern Munich, if you're good enough to warrant their attention, are pretty good anywhere in Germany. But I understood the speaker's conclusion to say that if you aren't good enough to attract Bayern Munich's attention, but you're trying to attract an attention because you're a late bloomer of some second tier club, then you're really way better off living right near the second tier club. That was my, am I right?
It's one potential explanation for these differences in the second and third Bundesliga. This is true. On the other hand, James, you're completely right, I guess, as well, because like when we look at these centers, of course, Munich has a bit more than 1 million inhabitants. And when we look at the dots here, Munich is representing more than 1 million inhabitants here because of the big knot size. So Munich has like nearly 3 big knots, and a city like Hamburg with 1.8 million, nearly double the size of the agglomeration. They don't produce that much talent. So of course, some way they are different in talent development, definitely. But it's a question of how they get identified.
Stefan's been waiting patiently with his hand up.
Yes, unlike Steve, I wait my turn and don't interrupt. See, that's the difference between us. So another thought that I was wondering about was, I mean, this is all about networks as viewed from the perspective of the player, but what about from the perspective of the clubs themselves? I mean, these clubs have networks amongst themselves, and I don't know how it works in Germany. I don't know. I mean, like in England, you have Premier League teams that have established relationship with a Championship team, a League One team. Are there equivalent relationships in German football? Because they would presumably be sort of significant. You would expect them to be significant in determining. So, meaning if you work for a club that had a connection to Bayern Munich, you might be more likely to get a tryout at Bayern Munich. That's my
Yeah, it's a very good point. And also regarding the league appearances, that if I have a connection with Bayern Munich as a second division club or in the third league, of course I get the talent in the end. Not only regarding identification, but I get the good talent from the under 19 years, which might not be good enough for Bayern Munich, but quite good for the second Bundesliga. So yeah, very good point. But we did not include this in our analysis. So we don't have data on it yet.
But is it doable? I mean, I suppose that's the question, because it's not easy necessarily to identify which clubs have links with each other. But do you think it's possible? Or?
I have my doubts, but I did not look at it, to be honest. But it's a very, very good point. If I have these connections with Bayern Munich or other very good NLZs, of course, this might raise the likelihood of under 90 players from these good NLZs to make an appearance, just due to the connections of the adult clubs. Yeah.
Because another thing I was thinking was, I mean, for example, you could look at the manager of the club or the head coach of the club where the player goes in the top 3 leagues, and then look back. Did that individual ever have a connection to the club where the player is coming from? Because again, you've got to think that those personal networks and relationships probably play a very big role in determining where the players end up.
Okay, more questions and comments? Thanks, Stefan, for that. In which case we can thank our speakers, Galila and Finn. Really interesting paper on the development of talent in Germany. Thank you everyone for taking part in our first talk back after Easter. We're back again next week and the week after. Next week we have Alex Farnell from Maynooth University in Ireland presenting Race and Coaching Hierarchy, the promotion of assistant coaches in the NFL. So please do join us next week if you can. And I do wish you a very pleasant weekend. Thanks again, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Nice paper.